أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن يبتغي غير الإسلام دينا فلن يقبل منه وهو في الآخرة من الخاسرين صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is the second in this series of 3 Majlis in which I have recited for tonight this ayat number 85 from Surah Al-Imran, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses by saying that whoever follows a religion other than Islam, it will not be accepted from him, and such an individual will be considered amongst the losers on the Day of Judgment. Last night, if you remember our discussion where we had touched upon briefly on the concept of ibadat, where in those ayat of Surah Fajr where Allah says فَادْخُلِي فِي عِبَادِي وَادْخُلِي جَنَّتِي, and we mentioned just one aspect, and that was salat. I wanted to continue on that discussion. Of course, I ran out of my time last night. That how every ibadat that we perform today, the inquisitive minds of our children, they have the right to question many of these things which are part and parcel of our religion. In our days when we were growing up, Deen was given to us in a way where there was no questions asked. And sometimes questioning was considered blasphemous. And many a time, because our elders did not know the answer to the questions, they would brush it aside and say, just do it as you're told. But of course, times have changed. We live in a different world altogether. And therefore, these inquisitive minds question many of the practices that we have. And therefore, it is okay for them to ask questions regarding some of our practices, regarding some of our beliefs, regarding some of our wajibat, and even muharramat. Nothing wrong with that. Because we follow a deen, and that's why I chose this ayat for tonight, where there aren't any loopholes. We follow a religion which does not believe in shortcuts. We follow a religion which does not have a dead end, where someone would say, well, it is there, but we can't explain it. Although within this religion of Islam, the other madhahib might have a dead end. For example, our brothers in faith, they have this concept in the wujud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they're unable to explain some of the ayat of Quran that are used metaphorically. And in Quran, Allah uses many of the verses metaphorically. For example, when Allah speaks about His body parts, those aren't to be taken in literal sense. When Allah says in Quran, Yadullah fawqa aydihim, God's hands are above their hands, they should not be taken in the literal sense that Allah possesses what? Hands. When Quran says, Kullu shayin halikun illa wajha, everything will perish except His face. This ayat should not be taken literally that Allah possesses what? A face. When ayat of Quran says, وَعَلَى الْأَرْشِ إِسْتَوَى, Allah is sitting on His throne. This should not be taken literally that God has an entity, a body, na'udhu billah, where upon which He's sitting on a kursi. وَسِيَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, as the ayat of Quran says. Or when the ayat of Quran says, هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ, هُوَ السَّمِيعُ وَالْبَصِيرُ, that Allah listens, through which? Hears. Allah basir, Allah sees, through which? Through these eyes. So when you look at the ayat of Quran, where you have these verses, sometimes it could lead to someone's misunderstanding of it by saying, when you take these ayat in the literal sense. This is where they have a concept, a weird concept, regarding the wujud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A famous quote from Imam Abu Hanifa, where when he was asked about the wujud of Allah, that He is alal arshi istawa, Allah is sitting on His throne, he said, imanuhu wajib, you need to believe in it. Was-su'alu anhu bid'ah, but questioning how He's sitting is bid'at. What do you mean? He said, you have to bring iman that Allah is sitting. But to ask the kayfiyat and how He's sitting is bid'at. So what are you doing? You're closing the doors for mankind to question that claim that you have made in Quran according to your perception. Where in our madhab, there aren't any closed doors. There aren't any dead ends. As a student of this religion, you come up to me and you ask me a question, I may not have the answers. That does not mean Islam hasn't answered these things. My ability may be lacking in many areas. Even the greatest of the scholars, when you go and you meet them and you ask them a question, they might say, hold on a second, let me look it up. You're marja taqleed? Why do you need to look it up? It's your fatwa. He said, yeah, I've given 50,000 fatwas. You think I remember all of them? So let me reconfirm so I can tell you what it is. Kind of like the story of Mullah Nasruddin, this character in the past. A person came to him and asked him a question. Mullah Nasruddin, with absolute humility, said, I don't know. You know how difficult it is to say, I don't know? For some people, it becomes very difficult. They say, Abru nahi rahegi, we will be disgraced if we didn't answer the question. So if someone asks me a question, I don't know the answer, I'm going to make something up. No, that is against the teachings of Quran and Ahlul Bayt. Do not say that which you do not know. Ayat of Quran says, everything that you utter from your tongue, alayhi raqibun atid. There's aqid and raqib that are watching over you. So this person asked Mullah Nasruddin a question, he said, I don't know. The man turned around and said, you have such a huge amama on your head, and you're saying you don't know? Mullah Nasruddin took off his amama and put it on his head. He said, if this amama is making me all knowledgeable, then you go ahead and answer. Jokes aside, this is where the real problem sometimes arises. So we need to understand that these ayat are not used literally in Quran, rather these are metaphorical usage of Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Yadullah fawqa aydihim, God's hands are on top of their hands. Or when Jews associated that God's hands are tied, Yadullah maghlula, Allah responded by saying, no, bal yadahu mabsutatan, God's hands are wide open. His hands are not closed. So right away they argued, oh, that means Allah has hands. And He gives from His hands to whomever He wishes. How do we draw a parallel and understand these ayat then? Simple. In terminology, the word yad, or the hand, refers to power. For example, if you say who in whose hands is the government, you say, well, the President of the United States. Although I'll argue, Prime Minister of another place has everything in his hands. But anyways, let's not make it political. Who's running the affairs? Who has the power? He says it's all in the hands of the king. Literally, is it in his hands? No, we use the word hands as to what? Declare the power of the individual. We say that in Urdu as well. Unke haath mein hai sab. What do you mean unke haath mein hai sab? Meaning that he has control over all of that. So the hand in our regular usages also refers to what? Power. When Allah says Yadullah fawqa aydihim, it's referring to what? God's powers are above their powers. Similarly, when it says that وَعَلَى الْأَرْشِ إِسْتَوَى, Allah is sitting on top of His throne. This is a metaphoric use. It should not be taken in the literal sense. Why? Because the concept of musallat, that Allah is sitting, is kind of like you and I when we sit on a chair. Now this is a big enough mimbar that I could have more people sit with me over here. But when you're sitting on a chair, there's no one else can sit with you. Meaning you're completely controlling every aspect of that chair. You are musallat on top of that chair. It's under your control. Again, the word tasallut and istawa refers to not the literal meaning of it, but the metaphorical meaning of it. When it says kullu shay'in halikun illa wajha, everything will perish except His face, what does that mean? Face is for recognition. You have your Face ID when you open the phone, right? Face is what? Recognition. Some of the people over here know me from New Jersey. When you met with me, you said, Maulana, do you know so-and-so? I said, I've heard the name, but I can't put a picture to it. Then you're like, oh, here, let me show you a picture. Oh, yeah, I know this person. What happened? I couldn't recognize him with the name, but I was able to recognize the person with the face. Face serves as what? A recognition. When you see the face of someone, you recognize them right away. Similarly, Allah does not have a physical face, but that which leads us to the recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is the deen ilahi. Through this deen, you recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This deen was sent so that we have an understanding that there's a God above us that we must recognize. And similarly, all the other ayat. You know, there was a debate that took place in Saudi Arabia when one of our scholars was visiting, and they engaged with him in a conversation. The debate came to this point, where the Wahhabis believe in the literal sense of these ayat. They believe God has proper hands, bodies, face, ears, eyes, all of that. And that is contradictory to our aqaid. So there was this debate that took place with our scholar. He said, how can you take the ayat of Quran out of context and say these are not literally used? Look at the zahanat of our scholars, intelligence. He right away quoted an ayat of Quran. This debate was being done by the Mufti of Saudi Arabia, Bin Baz. If you know Bin Baz, he was blind. So our Shaykh, our Syed, our scholar said to him, what do you say about the ayat of Quran which says, وَمَنْ كَانَ فِي هَذِهِ أَعْمَى فَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ أَعْمَى? The one who's blind in this world will be blind in the hereafter. Does that mean because you're blind in this world, you will be raised blind in the hereafter? This blindness is not referring to your physical ailment and disability. This blindness is referring to your lack of knowledge and ignorance. That means that whoever is ignorant in this world will remain ignorant in the hereafter. That does not mean the poor guy who was born blind or who went blind in this world or who became disabled in this world will remain disabled in the hereafter. Through that example, he was able to explain to him that don't take the ayat of Quran, many of these ayat of Quran, they should not be taken literally, rather there's a context and there's an understanding as far as that is concerned. Three things that I want to mention under the previous ayat that I had talked about before I get to tonight's discussion. And there's so much to say and there's so little time. That while sticking on the subject of Quran, Quran is our lifeline. Quran and of course Ahlul Bayt. Rasulullah said, Inni tarikun fikum al-thaqalain, kitab Allahi wa itrati Ahlul Bayti. Wa in tamassaktum bihima lan tadillu ba'di. I'm leaving behind two weighty things, Quran and Ahlul Bayt. If you were to hold on to both of these, you will never go astray. Hatta yarida alayya al-hawd, until they return back to me at the pound of Kawthar. So with that said, these two are our lifelines. We cannot compromise on these two. We cannot compromise on the belief that we have on the wilayat of Ahlul Bayt, nor can we compromise on the fact that this is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a guide for all of mankind, but it is guidance for us as well. So when Quran has to be understood, when Quran needs to be studied, unfortunately in our communities, Quran has become a book that should be kept on the top of the shelf. Where only when someone dies, you're going to open it up and read it. Only when you have to read Surah Yasin, you're going to read it. Only when someone is going on a travel that they pass underneath the Quran. Only when there's a Soyam Majlis or a Chehlum Majlis or a Barsi Majlis, you'll bring out the Quran and you'll read it. These are the occasions when we open up Quran. We make a great effort when it comes to our kids. We get them to start reading Quran from a very young age. Then begins a race that whose kid is going to finish Quran before. First. You know, my kid finished Quran when he was only 8 years old. Oh, that's too old. My kid finished when he was 6. You know, there's a competition going on. As long as they read it and they continue reading it. Fourth Imam Zainul Abidin ﷺ said, لَوْ مَاتَ مَا بَيْنَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ لَمَسْتَوْحَشْتُ بَعْدَ أَنْ يَكُونَ الْقُرْآنُ مَعِي. If everything perished from east to west, metaphorically, if everything perished, nothing remained from east to west, I will not feel terrified for a moment as long as Quran was with me. Why? Amir al-Mu'mineen said, Quran, zahiruhu aniq, wa batinuhu amiq. The outside of the Quran is beautiful, pure, clean, tahir. And the internal aspect of Quran is deep, amiq. So Quran should not just be a book that is kept on the top shelf, away from the reach of the children. This race of finishing Quran first, which is a good race, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. Have this race. Encourage people. You know, then you have this grand celebration of Ameen, which is also good. You're rewarding your child of having reached a milestone. But then what happens when they're 10 years old, 11 years old, they finish Quran? You have a celebration, you have Ameen, you invite the entire community, you have Maulana read the Quran for them. Ameen is done, gifts are shared. Then Quran is closed. Haza firaqun bayni wa baynak. This is a firaq. This is a distance. This is a goodbye, farewell between me and you. And I'm not going to open you again. Until, you know, for example, someone dies, for example. Or I have to read Surah Yasin from it, for example. What happens is that this child, 4 years later, 5 years later, when they're 16 years old, they can barely read Quran. What was expected of them at that age was to be able to understand Quran. For them to be able to dive into the tafsir of Quran. For them to be able to decipher many of the, mysteries of Quran. Make this of a, affair that they are close to this Quran. Quran is makhlut and is part of their bodies and soul and flesh. Now there's a separation. So Khuda, don't be in this race so they finish first and then stop it. Make them continue to do it. And it's not breaking the bank either. Nowadays, you shouldn't have any issue hiring someone to teach Quran to your kids online. There's so many avenues. And they are very cheap, by the way. What that does, that practice, is that it makes them read Quran on a daily basis. Once they finish Quran and you say, well, we don't need the tutor anymore, that disconnects them. They will read whenever they found time, otherwise they will not. Why? Why are we doing this? If you only realize the barakat of this book. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam, in Kitab al-Mustatab, Al-Kafi, Muhammad Yaqub Qulayni, he writes and he narrates this beautiful hadith. He says, إن البيت الذي يقرأ فيه القرآن ويذكر الله عز وجل فيه. House in which Quran is recited and Ahlul Bayt يذكر الله فيه and Allah is remembered. What happens to this house? تكثر barakatuhu. Number one, the barakat increase. The blessings of this house increase. تحضره الملائكة. The angels gain access to such houses. وتهجره الشياطين. And shayateen stay away, far, far away from such houses. But what do we have in some houses? You have music blasting. You have, and then you expect barakat to increase in the house. Then you expect, malaika to come to the house. No, only shaitan will gain access to such house. Remember the story of the man, Bishr Hafi. When seventh Imam walked past his house, he heard the sound of music. Imam stopped, knocked on the door. The Ghanis came out. Imam said, whose house is this? Is he a free person or is he a slave? She responded by saying, no, he's free. My master is free. Imam said, I wish he was a slave. She went back inside. The master asked him, what took you so long? He said, this man said, I wish the owner of this house was a slave. Bishr Hafi understood who it was. He ran barefoot out of his house. That's why it's called Bishr Hafi. Bishr was running barefoot. And he caught up to Imam and he said, Imam, I apologize for what I have done. The effects of this music that is being played in my house. Imam then mentions the reverse side of it. He says, in al-bayt allazi la yuqra'u fihi al-Quran, house in which Quran is not recited. وَلَا يُذْكَرُ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ فِي, house in which Allah is not remembered. تَقِلُّ barakatuh. Barakat start to decrease. Have you ever heard someone say, barakat hi nahi hai? Kisi cheez mein barakat hi nahi hai. There's no barakat in things anymore. Everything is ending so quickly. There's no more barakat. Guess what? There are causes and effects. تَقِلُّ barakatuh. تَهْجُرُهُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. The angels stay far, far away from such houses. وَتَهْجُرُهُ الشَّيَاطِينَ. Shayateen gain access to such houses. But as long as the house in which Quran is recited, Allah is remembered, Imam says, تُضِيءُ لِأَهْلِ السَّمَاءِ كَمَا تُضِيءُ الْكَوَاكِبِ لِأَهْلِ الْأَرْضِ. This house shines for the inhabitants of the heavens the same way stars shine for the inhabitants of the world. When you look up on the sky in a clear night, what do you see? The stars shining. When the inhabitants of the heavens, they look down upon the earth, they see there are certain houses that are shining and they're bright. These are the houses of mu'mineen in which Quran is being recited. This is a book which will help you even in barzakh, in your purgatory. When you depart this world, when your account is closed, but you are in that middle stage, you will be asked, do you know Quran? You say, yes, I do. The angel will tell you, Iqra warqa. Iqra warqa. Read and go up. Read and go up. Every ayat that you recite, you will be given a maqam higher than before. So don't take this book lightly. Don't leave it so that the dust settles on top of it. One day when you have to do tayammum, you're able to find some dust. That should not be the usage of this book, that great book that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent for the guidance of mankind. So what should have been done by these children who are 16 and 17, that now they should be reading the translation and even reading the tafsir of this book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yet they're so far away, and I'm not even speaking about the kids anymore, the elders of our community, with all due respect. You're experts in your fields. You're able to solve and understand the most complex formulas of mathematics and sciences. When it comes to reading Quran, you have trouble reading one ayat of Quran without any mistakes. It's so terrible. One ayat of Quran asks someone to read, and they'll make 10 mistakes in between. Not paying attention to the Arab, Fatha, Dhamma, Kasra, and making all blunders. Forget about the people, public. Sometimes people sitting on the mimbar, they make blunders when it comes to reciting the Quran. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So this book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it is not used under the lens of Ahlul Bayt, there comes problems. You know, there's a person by the name Ishaq Kindi in the time of our 11th Imam, who was compiling a book called Tanaquzat fil Quran, contradictions in Quran. You know, sometimes our folks come up to us and say, Maulana, do we have an ayat like this in Quran? Which says, kill these infidels, run after them until they're submissive. So yes, there is a Quran ayat. Why? Your question should not be why. The worst part is your Christian counterpart has to tell you that there's an ayat like this in Quran. Your non-Muslim friend had to tell you that there's an ayat in Quran which apparently speaks of barbarism and terrorism. Why this ayat of Quran is there? No, look at the context of the revelation. Don't be like those who use and misconstrue and misuse the ayat of Quran for their own benefit. This ayat says, yes, run after the infidels. There's no implication of that today. It does not mean those non-Muslims that Quran is, exhorting us, is encouraging us to run after them. Kill them until they're submissive. No, that's not what Quran is saying. That might seem like it's saying. But if you look at it from the lens of Ahlul Bayt, then you'll understand the real meaning of it. This ayat of Quran has a context of revelation. Just like all the other scriptures, there are many things, there are context of revelation. This ayat was revealed under certain circumstances. You understand that circumstance, you'll see that this ayat is not implemented today, encouraging you, na'udhu billah, to go ahead and take anyone's life. How come you don't take this ayat compared with the ayat of Surah Ma'idah, which says that man qatala nafsan bighayri nafsin ka'annama qatala an-nasa jami'a, that whoever takes one life, it is as if he has taken the life of entire humanity. This ayat is in their Quran as well. How you put this ayat which says whoever takes one life, it is as if you've killed entire humanity, and then put this ayat next to it which says run after these infidels and kill them. Over there Allah did not say, whoever kills a mu'min, although there's a separate ayat from mu'min. He said nafsan, any nafs, any person, regardless of their faith. If you take their life, it is as if you have taken the... So there's a contradiction right there, right? No, there's no contradiction. This ayat is true, which says you are not supposed to take anyone's life. That is the core teaching of Islam. That ayat has a context of revelation. It was revealed under certain circumstances. But because we believe that every word has remained in Quran unaltered, therefore this ayat still exists. We cannot remove anything from Quran. This ayat was revealed under the pretext of what? The Treaty of Hudaybiyah. That there was a treaty that was signed between the Mushrikeen and Muslimin in the 6th year after Hijrah. What was the treaty? Treaty was that Muslimin will not perform the rituals of Umrah and Hajj this year, they'll come back next year. Number two, they will not be between Mushrikeen and the Muslimin. There's a pact that no one will show aggression towards one another or wage war against each other for the next 10 years. These are part of the MOU. Today we had the same MOU which was broken. These were the conditions of it. Memorandum of Understanding, so-called. And yet, what happened? Within the first year, the Mushrikeen breached the document. They, sat in ambush to the Muslims who were not carrying any arms. You know how difficult it was for the trade caravans when they would go towards Yemen or when they go towards Syria, that along with their materials that they want to trade, they have to carry weapons as well. So this gave a relief to them. They don't have to carry any more weapons because they don't have to worry about someone robbing them anymore. So they would travel without any worry. This was a good agreement. But within the first year, the Mushrikeen, they ambushed the Muslims. They attacked their caravan, they robbed them of their goods, and they killed many in the process. Now what do you think the ayat of Quran is going to tell? That's okay, forgive them. No, as it is, Islam is fragile right now after the migration. Whatever little they had, they left behind. Now they're making ends meet again, and someone robs them of their right. So Islam is not going to hold back and say, that's okay, forgive these people now. They are ignorant people, let them go. Islam came back with a harsh warning. Run after these infidels. Take back what belongs to you. Slay them until they're submissive. And of course, we know Fatih Makkah, the conquest of Makkah, took place in the 8th year after Hijrah. 6th year, they signed this treaty. Within the 2 years, Muslimin have conquered the city of Makkah. That happened because of this breach of document. So this ayat is the context of revelation. Before you surrender, say, I don't know why this ayat in Quran exists. I think this ayat should not be in Quran. I'm with you. This ayat is too harsh. It should not be in Quran. No, don't surrender. Learn, understand, read, ask someone. Use AI if you have to today. AI can give you the answers today. Put in ChatGPT why this happened, why this ayat in Quran is there. It'll give you a very detailed answer. Better than the answer that I have given you right now. But with that understanding, we need to make sure that we analyze this book, understand it properly, make this to be part of our daily routine, and understand this kitab. So 3 occasions, that was one occasion, where it seems like there's apparent contradiction in the Quran. I'll give you second ayat, or second set of ayat. Here is an opportunity for you to think about it for a second. Does there really exist? There are people who are working on this, to do PhDs, to talk about the contradictions in the Quran. If they're able to prove one contradiction, what will happen? The entire book will be under scrutiny and question. So in the ayat of Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, which I had recited for you last night, Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. Everybody knows this ayat. Indeed, with the dhikr of Allah, what happens? The hearts are satisfied. The hearts are at ease. And then, let me take you to Surah Anfal. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. Mu'min is someone when the dhikr of Allah is done, what happens to their heart? Wajala means their hearts are terrified, uneasy, scared, afraid. So what do you see in these 2 ayat? Say it. Contradiction? Yeah. There's a contradiction. One ayah says with the zikr of Allah you're at ease. The other ayah says with the zikr of Allah you are at unease. And these are what? Contradictory. One ayah says you are in itminan. The other side says you are in istirab. This is contradictory. Or another place in the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He speaks about taqwa, ayat number 1 or 2 of Surah Al-Imran. By the way, if you're using your phone, you can write down these ayat numbers. That is the only permissibility of using the phone while you're listening to the lecture. You can use your phones if you want to, but only when you're taking the notes. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Because we can only retain so much, right? Malana gave a reference. I don't know if it's being recorded. You can go back to and listen to it. But right now is the moment. Then you'll forget, whatever. Right now you can write it down. Ayat number 102 from Al-Imran says what? Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullaha haqqa tuqatihi wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. O those who believe, fear Allah the way He deserves to be feared. Haqqa tuqatihi. You know, this istilah is unique to Quran. Haqqa jihadihi, haqqa tilawatihi, haqqa ri'ayatihi, haqqa tuqatihi. Fear Allah the way He deserves. The way jo haq hai, darne ka waise daro. The way He deserves. And then you find an ayat in Quran where it says, ittaqullah mastata'tum. Fear Allah according to your abilities. Now tell me, with all honesty, when you tell your child, you have a test tomorrow, you better get 100. 100 out of 100. Or, if you're a father like me, you said, you have a test tomorrow, do your best. Now do your best and get 100. There's a difference between the two or no? Getting 100 out of 100 means you need to have a perfect score. Haqqa tuqatihi. Mastata'tum means, do your best. If you got 100, that's good. If you didn't, that's okay. So, these two ayat, which one says haqqa tuqatihi, the other says mastata'tum. What do you find between the two of them? Say it. Contradiction. Therefore, Quran has what? Contradiction in it. I'm just giving food for thought. Think about it. Another example for you. In Surah Qaf, when there's a discussion between Allah and Jahannam. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will speak to Jahannam and He will say what? Halim tala'ati. Are you filled? Meaning what? When Allah will be sending the inhabitants of Jahannam to Jahannam, Allah will ask Jahannam, are you full? Halim tala'ati. Imtala'a, mala'a means are you full? The Jahannam will respond, Hal min mazid? Is there more? What does that mean, Hal min mazid? For example, today, mashallah, there's a lot of room in this hall. But let's say on the day of Ashura, someone says from outside, is the hall full? You know, you will say, are there more people? When you say, are there more people? Means what? Send them in. We can squeeze them in here. Right? That's what it literally means. Quran says, when Allah said to Jahannam, Halim talati, are you filled? Jahannam responded by saying, Hal min mazid? Is there more? Keep on bringing it. I have enough room. I can accommodate as much as you want to send. Meaning I'm wide enough to accommodate as much as you want to send to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jahannam is huge, humongous, that it can accompany or encompass all of mankind from the time Hazrat Adam until the end of the times. That's how big Jahannam is. At another place in Quran, when Allah speaks about the sifat and the attributes of Jahannam, it says what? Makanan dayyaqa. It's a very tight place. So being a tight place or having lots of room is apparently what? Contradictory. Are these two ayat in contradiction? Apparently it seems like it. So I presented to you 4 ayat of Quran. The first one I've already answered. These 3 now. Haqqa tuqatihi. Number 2, when it comes to the issue of Jahannam, or when it comes to dhikr of Allah, right? 3 things. Now it's your duty to go ahead and find out whether or not Quran has contradiction in it or not. Because when someone from non-Muslims brings these ayat to you, and many such ayat, by the way, you won't have a response. Unless you enrich yourself and understand Quran, which is, by the way, available. You know, before I answer this, let me add this note onto it. Marhum father of mine, many of you know him, Maulana Tilmiz, who passed away a few years ago, he translated the Quran in Urdu. When he was translating it, someone asked him, Maulana, there's so many Urdu translations available. There's Farman Ali, there's Maqbul Ahmad, there's Allama Jawadi, there's Mohsin Najfi's, and all these other Allama Naqan, and so many Urdu translations. Why are you doing the translation of Quran in Urdu? You have a skill, you know Arabic, you know Urdu, you want to help the Urdu crowd. Why not write something which will be more beneficial than, again, translating the ayat of Quran? Well, we have so many translations available. Similarly in English, we have 50 different translations in English. You have Aubrey, you have Pickthall, you have Yusuf, you have the Shia translations in Muhammad Sarwar, Ali Quli Qarai, and other translations that are available. You go to tanzil.net and you have all of these translations that are available there. Why do we need another translation? He responded this. He said, Quran is a book which must be translated every 50 years. Every 50 years. And he gave a dalil and a reason. He gave a proof. He said, why? He said, because every 50 years human progress and their minds progress. That when this progression comes and they read Quran again, now Quran makes more sense to them. As when it made sense to them 50 years ago, 100 years ago. And then he gave an example. Last two ayat of Surah Zilzal. فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرٍ يَرَى وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَى. Whoever does an atom worth of good will see it. Whoever does an atom worth of evil will see it. Right? A man came to the Prophet, he said, oh Prophet, I want to learn Quran. Rasulullah, of course, didn't have time to teach Quran to everyone, so he asked one of his companions, go teach them Quran. That companion took this man, they opened up to Surah Zilzal. He said, read. إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا وَأَخْرَجَتِ الْأَرْضُ أَثْقَالَهَا until the end. When he read the last two ayat, that whoever does an atom worth of good will see it, and whoever does an atom worth of evil will see it. He said, this is Quran. He said, yes, this is Quran. He said, kafa. Bikaffi. It is enough for me. He got up and he left. This companion came back to Rasulullah and said, Rasulullah, what kind of, this talib ilm, the student that you sent to me, he was not here to learn. He studied one surah of Quran and he left. Rasulullah, what did you teach him? He said, I taught him this surah. He said, he repeated these last two ayat. He asked me if this is part of Quran and he left. Rasulullah responded, Raja'a faqihan. This man returned as a faqih, as a knowledgeable man. Why? Just one ayat was enough for him to awaken his inner conscience. Sometimes this is all you need. That one jolt is all you need to be awakened, to be brought out of your slumber. And that's what this decided. Many of us have read Quran multiple times, hundreds of times, but we haven't been jolted like this. That man read that one ayat, and that was enough to bring about that change into him. Ask why you have not been shaken up by Quran thus far, although you have read it hundreds of times. So, my father gave this example. He said, these two ayat, that Allah will show you everything that you have done. People who lived 300 years ago, Mullah Fayyad Kashani, when he translated this ayat, when he was doing the tafsir of Quran, tafsir Safi, when he translated this ayat, he had no idea about television, DVR, camcorders, computers, cameras, VCRs. Children today don't know what VCR is. You know, all these playback devices, surveillance cameras, they had no idea. Today you tell a 5-year-old, can you show me the Majlis that was recited? Say, yeah, I can pull it up on the YouTube. The Majlis from last year, yeah, I can pull up the Majlis from last year. The Sheikh that recited Majlis here 2 years ago, can you show me? Yes, it's there on YouTube. You can pull it up all the way back to 2-3 years ago. But 300 years ago, the person who had no idea about TV, video, recording, DVR, playback devices, camcorders, they just translated the ayat. Whoever does an atom worth of good, Allah will show them. Whoever does an atom worth of evil will show them. But today when you read this ayat, with all the technological advancement that are there as far as playback devices are concerned, now you understand how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show you every single deed of yours on big, humongous screen, which would be 4K, 8K, 16K, or 32K, whatever quality that you can get to as human beings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show you from all multiple angles. You know how the Super Bowl is captured from all 50 different angles? Every inch is shown in the replay. Guess what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has much better quality and better cameras that will show your deeds from all angles, that you will say to the extent مَا لِهَذَا الْكِتَابِ لَا يُغَادِرُ صَغِيرَةً وَلَا كَبِيرَةً. What is wrong with this book? It did not leave out the smallest of the details. To the very precision, every detail is mentioned in this ayat of Quran. So today, when you read the translation and with the human progression, you understand this Quran much better. Quran is a book which came without an expiry date. And it'll continue to be that way. Every year, it'll increase your Iman. That's why the ayat of Quran says, إِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. When the ayat of Quran are recited, their Iman increases. I'll explain. I'll leave you, sit on these 3 ayat that I gave you. That with the zikr of Allah, hearts are at ease. With the zikr of Allah, hearts are terrified. With taqwa, fear Allah the way He deserves. Fear Allah according to your ability. Jahannam being a mass, huge place, or Jahannam being a very tight place. I'll let you sleep over it tonight, and inshallah, I'll mention it tomorrow for you. Allahumma salli ala. But know this, Quran is incomplete without Ahlul Bayt. Again, this is not just an oratory or mere claim. This is proven through the ayat of Quran. You've heard that ayat a great deal. Surah Al-Imran, ayat number 61. فَمَنْ حَاجَّكَ فِيهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَكَ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ فَقُلْ تَعَالُوا نَدْعُ أَبْنَاءَنَا وَأَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَنِسَاءَنَا وَنِسَاءَكُمْ وَأَنفُسَنَا وَأَنفُسَكُمْ ثُمَّ نَبْتَهِلْ فَنَجْعَلْ لَعْنَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْكَاذِبِينَ. What is this ayat saying? This ayat is proving when Quran is not sufficient, because we don't believe in Hasbuna Kitabullah. The book of Allah is enough for us. Then when Quran is not sufficient, you need enforcement. You need supplemental enforcement. This ayat is proving to you. And not just in words, but also practically. Both proofs are there in this ayat of Quran. What is the debate? فَمَنْ حَاجَّكَ فِيهِ. O Rasul, when they argue with you, hajja, when they argue with you. Regarding what? Fihe. Now the zamir of fihe refers to Hazrat Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. فَمَنْ حَاجَّكَ فِيهِ. When these Christians, they argue with you regarding Hazrat Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, that he was son of God, right? And what do? فَمَنْ حَاجَّكَ فِيهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَكَ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ. After what we have revealed in Quran, what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveal in Quran? So when the Christians came, argued that Hazrat Isa is son of God, what did Rasulullah say to them? Inna masala Isa ka masale Adam khalaqahu min turab thumma qala lahu kun fayakun. Example of Isa is like the example of Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. Allah created them from clay and he said kun fayakun. If anyone, na'udhu billah, deserves to be called son of God, it should be Adam. He doesn't have father or a son, mother. At least Hazrat Isa has a mother in Janab Maryam sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But we don't call Adam alayhi to be son of God. The Jews did the same thing. They called Uzair ibn Allah. They did the same thing. Isa ibn Allah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَمَنْ حَاجَّكَ فِيهِ, when they argue with you regarding Isa alayhi salam, after we have given you proofs from the Quran, and Quran did not serve as the evidence for them, they were not convinced by it. Now tell them, فَقُلْ تَعَالَوْا نَدْعُوا أَبْنَاءَنَا وَأَبْنَاءَكُمْ. When Quran was not enough as a proof, now bring your children, we'll bring our children. You bring your women, we'll bring our women. You bring your nufus, we'll bring our souls, and then we'll do imprecation and mubahala, and we will send the la'anat of Allah on those who are liars. Who did Rasulullah bring? He brings as the misdaq of the sons Hassan and Hussein alayhi wassalam. He brings as the misdaq of Nisa Fatima DAR-E-ZEHRA, and he brings as the misdaq of Nafs Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi wassalam. These Panjatan, 5 folks came. Even the Asqaf Azam of Najran was saying, Inni la ara wujuhan. Indeed, I'm seeing the faces. If they were to make dua for Allah to move a mountain, by God the mountain will move and you will be perished. Therefore, do not engage in mubahala with these people or you will cease to exist. Salawat bi Muhammad. So, these are the proofs that we find in Quran. And this is where Ajr-e-Risalat comes into play. Quran did not just recommend this to us. Quran made it obligatory upon us to pay tribute to Ahlul Bayt. Inshallah, tomorrow's Majlis, this will remain as the starting point. But how did the Ummah pay Ajr-e-Risalat? You come to Karbala and you see how Hussein and his family was treated. Tonight, you're here to give pursa for that little girl known as Sakīna bint al-Hussein. You know, it's unfortunate that Imam Hussein, when he was making rounds on the night of Ashur, Imam stopped at a tent where there was a mother who was weeping. Not because she was afraid her children will be killed tomorrow. She was weeping because she was saying that I don't have any qurbani for tomorrow. This was Rubah, whom Imam heard as saying that, oh Allah, what can I give as qurbani tomorrow? I have a 6-month-old who can barely walk, and I have a 4-year-old daughter upon whom jihad is not wajib. Who will I give as a qurbani tomorrow when it comes to the time of shahada? Imam Hussein heard this. He came inside the tent and he said, Oh Rubab, do not underestimate the shahadat of Ali Asghar. The way he will give his qurbani will surpass the qurbani of many elders. Meaning what? The inqilab that will come from the qurbani of Ali Asghar, that even the enemy will be moving away. And they will be looking away. They will be wiping their tears as the arrow comes and pierces into the throat of Ali Asghar. And do not underestimate the shahadat and the qurbani of your daughter. She will die in the city where there will be the city upon which there was sabbu shitam done on Amirul Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib. That city will convert because of the inqilab your daughter will bring into that city. Imam ﷺ was predicting how the daughter of Hussein will be slain. We look at the qurbani of Sakīna on the day of Ashur, when the dust settled, when Hussein was martyred, the water was sent. Janab Zainab gave water to Sakīna. She said, Oh Pupi Amma, you drink first. Sakīna said, Oh Pupi Amma, you're thirsty. Janab Zainab said, Oh Beta, first the children drink. Sakīna took the cup in her hand. She started walking towards Maqtal. Zainab said, Where are you going? She said, My brother Ali Asghar. He left this world, and you're the one who said, the younger kids drink first. Ajrukum Allah. May Allah give you no grief or sorrow, except the grief and sorrow of Ahlul Bayt. As the caravan was traveling, on the route towards Sham, every time this little girl will look at the head of her father, because the Ma'mureen were told, when you go past the big cities, take the head of Hussein out. As the head of Hussein was out, this little girl will look at the head of Hussein and she will weep. What should you do when a 4-year-old weeps for her father who was killed and slain mercilessly? You should treat her with respect. You should treat her with mercy. And you should treat her with compassion. But look at the response that Sakīna gets. She gets slapped on her face. She gets hit by the Taziana. To the extent when Taziana hit her, she fell from her ride. Nobody noticed it because it was dark at night. The caravan continued to move until the head of Hussein came to the ground. They brought Zainab asking, "Oh Zainab, why is it the head of Hussein is on the ground and nobody can move it?" Zainab understood that there's an amadat of Hussein which is missing. Hussein has come down because he wants to make us understand that Zainab, go look for my daughter the way you looked for her on the day of Ashura. Zainab starts searching, "Oh Sakīna, where are you?" Until she sees that little Sakīna is sleeping in the lap of a lady. She says, "Oh lady, please give us our child back. This caravan will not move until we have our daughter." Then Abu Zainab takes Sakīna into her hands and then she says, "Oh lady, we are from Ahlul Bayt. If you have any hajat, we'll make dua for you. You protected our daughter." The lady said, "Oh Zainab, you did not recognize your own mother, Fatima Zahra. Ajrukum Allah." This little girl, she was in the Zindan of Sham. And Zindan of Sham was not an easy place. At night it would get cold. During the day it was very hot. Janab Sakīna was crying, "Baba, Baba." As she was crying, everybody in the Zindan started to cry. The sound reached the ears of Yazid Mal'oon. He said, "What is going on?" He said, "They're reciting a Majlis. They're doing Girya." He said, "Why?" "Because the daughter of Hussein is calling upon her father." Yazid said, "Send the head of Hussein." As the head of Imam Hussein was brought in a tasht, covered with handkerchief, she looked at that. She said, "I'm not hungry. Why have you brought food for me? I am not hungry." As soon as they removed the cover, she saw the head of her father. She embraced it with her heart. She started to weep even harder. Everybody raised their voices. There was so much kohram. While people stopped crying, it was too late. This daughter of Hussein has already left this world. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Oh Allah, please accept our ibadah tonight. Oh Allah, we've committed a lot of sins. Please forgive our sins. Oh Allah, give us the tawfiq and ability to follow the commands and teachings of Ahlul Bayt. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of our great Imam and make us amongst the helpers and soldiers of Imam. Akhir dawana, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen. Matam Hussein.